In this video, I am going to be surviving 500 days in hardcore Minecraft. Before we get into the video, I would like to say that only 5% of the people watching my videos are actually subscribed, so if you go on to enjoy the video, consider subscribing. It's completely free, and you can always unsubscribe if you don't enjoy the video. If this video gets 10,000 likes, I will survive another 100 days. With all of that out of the way, let's get straight into how I survived 500 days of hardcore Minecraft. To start off the first day of the challenge, I walked around and said hello to everyone in Snowville. Before doing anything else, I visited the Enderman grinder and repaired my gear. In my 400 days video, I asked you all if I should have the ground of the village be made of grass or moss. Most people wanted me to change it to moss, so I used the rest of the day to begin the conversion. Days 402 and 403 were spent gathering materials for a shulker shell farm that I was going to use to get infinite shulker boxes. However, the last item needed for the farm was something I didn't have: wither roses. Luckily, I've pretty much perfected my wither skull farming skills by now, and I was able to collect the 3 skulls in less than a day. Once these skulls were collected, I returned to the obsidian platform where I had fought my previous withers, summoned the wither, and then began farming roses. My methods were slightly unorthodox, but after a while I managed to lure the wither to a pillager outpost and gathered the roses that the fallen pillagers dropped. With all of the materials collected, I returned to the world spawn and began building the chamber where the shulker would be trapped. The farm design that I am using is from a YouTuber named DevilMock, and the tutorial is from Shulkercraft. Their links will be in the description. To start day 408, I smelted a bunch of sand for the farm. While the sand was cooking, I bought some food and then traveled to the end to capture a shulker. The first thing that I did after arriving at the end was spawn-proof the area around the end portal so that the shulker would not be able to teleport away when I pushed it in. Once that was done, I used one of the end gateways and flew around until I found an end city. My plan was to create a long railway that would transport the shulker all the way to the end portal. Building the railroad was easy, but it took a long time to complete. My next challenge was actually getting the shulker into the minecart. Weirdly, you can actually put a boat into a minecart, which meant that all I had to do was get the shulker into a boat and then row it to the railroad. Dealing with the constant levitation was annoying, but things definitely could have been a lot worse. Once the shulker was in the minecart, things went smoothly, and before long, I had managed to bring my first shulker to the overworld. After returning to the farm, I built a box around the shulker to prevent it from hitting me. However, when I went to move the shulker to its new home, I discovered that the snow golems I had created were all gone. I had, unfortunately, forgotten to place a block above their heads, and all of the golems had melted in the rain. Replacing the snow golems was an easy fix, and I was able to quickly get back to moving the shulker. Once the shulker was in, I began building the rest of the farm. This mostly meant making a bunch of nether portals and spawning areas for the other shulkers. On day 414, I came back to the village and picked up more glass for the farm. While there, I worked on converting more of the grass to moss. The next 3 days were spent finishing the shulker farm. This is my first time building this type of farm, and I was surprised by how easy it was to make. I feel like getting infinite shulker boxes maybe shouldn't be this easy, but hey, you won't see me complaining. With the farm complete, I spent the day AFKing in order to test the rates. When I went to check how fruitful the AFK session had been, I was shocked. Overnight, the minecarts had glitched, and the shulkers that were coming through the portal weren't getting picked up. There were so many that some blocks even had multiple shulkers stacked on top of each other. After fixing the farm, I spent another night AFKing. Luckily, everything went smoothly this time, and I was able to collect another 2 stacks of shells. The rest of the day was spent repairing my gear at the Enderman farm and organizing my ender chest as it had become very messy. My plan for the next few days was to finish converting the grass to moss. Before I could do that, however, I needed to gather a bunch of glowstone, so off to the nether it was for me. This took a lot longer than I originally thought it would. My strategy was to use bone meal to spread the moss. Unfortunately, there were a few issues with this. The first was that when I bone mealed the moss, a bunch of tall grass, azalea bushes, and flowers also spawned. Because of this, I was forced to use water and clear out the extra foliage, which, needless to say, took a long time. I also had to deal with the bone meal converting my stone path into moss. This one, seemingly small issue, added an extra hour or two onto the process, as I had to be very careful not to bone meal the wrong blocks. But I would definitely say that it was worth it. Snowville looks so much more vibrant now. To start the day, I fixed the iron farm, which had broken sometime in the previous 100 days. Once that was done, I visited the Enderman farm to repair my tools. I was in the mood to build something after all the monotonous moss placing, which meant that it was time for another addition to the village. Although I had already built a clothing store, marketplace, and library, I decided to make a general store that would, in theory, sell a bunch of random items. Of course, I'm in a single player world, so it's not actually going to sell anything, but it's still a cool idea. There's not much to say about the actual build, as it's very similar to most of the other buildings, but I still think it turned out good. I was running a little bit low on food, so I traded with the butcher to restock. The rest of the day was spent planting roses in the Iron Golem Memorial. I have to say, seeing the field get bigger and bigger over time has been one of my favorite parts of this world. At this point in the challenge, I finally updated the world to version 1.18. This meant that it was time for an adventure. My first goal was to find a big mountain and hang out with the goats. Unfortunately, a lot of the chunks around my base had been generated in previous updates, so I had to travel farther in order to find new terrain. Luckily, spotting a mountain isn't that difficult, and I was able to find a really cool, snowy one relatively quickly. While searching for a herd of goats, I came across a patch of powdered snow and gathered several buckets of it. After finding a goat, I hopped in a boat with it and got the whatever floats your goat advancement. Now that I had explored the cliffs portion of the update, it was time to investigate the caves. The first cave that I came across was small, and didn't contain much except for a couple ores and some glow lichen. Obviously, my adventuring urges had not been satisfied yet, so I went looking for a new cave. While doing this, I rediscovered the nether portal that I had used to get the Uneasy Alliance advancement, and found one of the new meadow biomes, which I planned on returning to later in the challenge. The next cave that I explored was much larger, and actually let me explore below Y0. I also found a few diamonds, but at this point I have so many that finding more wasn't as exciting as it used to be. This was the final part of my adventure, and I have to say, it was definitely my favorite part too. My goal was to find a lush cave, and luckily, there's a super easy way to locate them. All you have to do is look for an azalea tree, and then dig down. As you can expect, this did not take very long, and I was deep underground exploring before day 445 was over. I already had a lot of experience with lush caves from surviving 100 days in them, but seeing one in a regular Minecraft world was way cooler. I also caught another axolotl to add to the aquarium. However, the lush cave did not even come close to what I stumbled across next. There, right in front of me, was the largest suspended mineshaft that I have ever seen. To be fair, I haven't seen that many, but this one was definitely the best so far. The combination of chains holding all of the platforms above giant lava lakes, the glowberry vines hanging from the ceiling, and giant deep slate pillars scattered around made for quite the view. Here are the coordinates in case you want to come check it out for yourself. Alright, checking out the new 1.18 features was fun, but it's time to get back to business. After getting home, I added the new axolotl into my aquarium and then repaired the iron golems. I'm a bit confused on how they keep getting injured despite the lack of any danger in Snowville. Once that was done, I headed to the quarry and mined for a while. Now that we are halfway through the challenge, it is time to reveal the names of my 3 axolotls and 2 parrots. For the axolotls, we have Icy from AAA.exe, Skies from Skyzon, and Ito from 8J15. And for my 2 parrots, we have Snowflake from Veronike, and Skittles from Brawn Fighter. Thanks to everyone who submitted name suggestions, I had a great time seeing all of your ideas. With the naming out of the way, I finished the day by repairing my gear at the Enderman farm. While there, I thought about what build I wanted to add to the village next, and decided on a tannery for the leather workers. One of my goals for this series is to make a structure in Snowville for each of the different villager professions. I've already built most of the more common village buildings, such as a blacksmith, library, and bakery, so I was mostly left with the more obscure options like the tannery. The actual build wasn't anything super crazy, but I do think that it turned out well, considering the fact that I have no idea what an actual tannery looks like. Updating to 1.18 had brought a bunch of new advancements to the game, and I wanted to get a few of them completed. To start off, I fell all of the way from the top of the world to the very bottom in order to get the Caves and Cliffs achievement. I then grabbed a pair of leather boots and stood on some powdered snow. After that, I flew over to a nearby meadow biome and played some music. While returning home, I harvested a few beehives for the apiary. The extra bees gave me enough honey to make a full block, which I slid off of to get the sticky situation advancement. To finish off the easy advancements, I grabbed one of my axolotls and fought a few drowned with it. The next advancement that I wanted to complete was one that I had been dreading ever since the previous 100 days. That's right, it's time to get the Adventuring Time challenge. As you can probably tell, this took a while. There were 5 biomes that I still needed to find. These were the Stony Peaks, Old Growth Spruce Taiga, Windswept Gravelly Hills, Ice Spikes, and, worst of all, the Eroded Badlands. On the first day of searching, I found a weird shipwreck that generated completely on land, and a natural spawned pink sheep. During the next 2 days, I found 4 out of the 5 remaining biomes. And, you guessed it, the last one that I needed to find was the Eroded Badlands. Trust me, finding this biome is going to be painful. For the next hour, real time by the way, I simply flew around looking for any sign of a Badlands biome. And on day 465, I finally spotted the red sand shores of the mesa. I was extremely happy until I saw a nether portal. It turns out that I had managed to somehow find the same Badlands biome as the previous 100 days. After arguably the biggest disappointment in this video, I continued on in search of the final biome. Luckily, it seemed that the Minecraft gods decided to give me some good fortune, as I discovered a second Badlands biome less than 3 days after the first one. While gliding around, I heard the familiar chime of the advancement completion. It had taken over 80,000 blocks of searching, but I had finally managed to complete the challenge. I traveled through the nether to get home more quickly, as I definitely did not want to spend another 10 days flying. Throughout my time in this world, I've spent a lot of time just staring at Snowville, trying to figure out what builds I want to add and where I should add them. One of the last spots that still felt empty was next to the castle where my original starter house was. Seeing as the area was right next to the castle, I wanted to build a barracks as it would make sense to have the village defense be next to the most important part of the village. This was actually one of the easier builds for me to construct, as I already had a pretty good idea in my head of what a barracks should look like. I ended up not building an interior as I was starting to run a little bit low on time for this 100 days, and didn't have any good ideas for what to add inside. Still, I think the build turned out well, and fills the empty space nicely. Days 478 to 480 were spent collecting every food in the game for the Balanced Diet achievement. I already had many of the foods I needed in my storage room, but it still took a few days to gather the other ones which were less common. For example, chorus fruit. I did not have any in storage, so I traveled all the way to the Outer End Islands to get some. While there, I also visited an end city and got the great view from up here advancement using Shulker levitation. With all the items collected, I was ready to eat every food in the game. As you would expect, this went smoothly, although I did have some trouble getting hungry enough to eat everything. Once that was done, I got the Glow and Behold advancement for using glow ink on a sign, and the Wax on, Wax off advancement for waxing and unwaxing a copper block. The next achievement that I started working on was Feels Like Home, where you ride a strider 50 blocks in the overworld. This one took a little longer simply because I had to bring a strider to the overworld and then create a 50 block long lava highway for it to ride on. Another benefit of the wall around Snowville is that I won't have to see the lava highway I built again because it's pretty ugly. On day 483, I was back to gathering food for an advancement. However, this time I was getting it to breed animals instead of eating it myself. Once everything was ready, I set off to get the 2x2 achievement for breeding every mob in the game. I started off in the nether by breeding a few striders and some hoglins. The next day I bred bees, llamas, chickens, pigs, wolves, and rabbits. I also tamed 2 new cat breeds to help progress the complete catalog advancement. On day 485, I found and tamed another 4 new cat breeds. To make things even crazier, I had found all 6 new cats in the same village. I did not have enough time to move all of the cats back to Snowville, so I had them stay in the biggest village house instead. During the next 3 days, I bred horses, donkeys, and attempted to breed 2 mules together. It turns out that you can't breed mules, but I hadn't figured that out yet. The next advancement that I wanted to work on was Star Trader, where you trade with a villager at max height. After flying to Snowville to get a few materials, I returned to what I was beginning to call the Advancement Village. On top of a village house, I built a water elevator up to the height limit and then transported the villager inside. In my opinion, this is a bit of a random advancement, but it wasn't hard to complete, so I'm fine with it. If this video gets 10,000 likes, I'll punch the villager off. And then, something stupid happened. I jumped off the platform and forgot to deploy my elytra. Luckily, I had a totem in my offhand, but it's a bit of a bummer as I was planning on getting the post-immortal achievement in a cooler way. Getting Star Trader had taken me until nighttime, which gave me the opportunity to get the Sniper Duel advancement as well. Before morning, I also found a witch hut, tamed the special witch's cat inside, and then brought it back to the cat house. At this point, I finally had the bright idea of checking Google to see if you could actually breed mules. Upon finding that you can't breed them, I left the village and resumed progress on the 2x2 achievement. The first animal that I bred were 2 pandas, which was a bit of a hassle due to all of the mobs attacking me. On my way to a mushroom island, I found and bred some goats. The next day, I tamed a new cat and bred llamas and mushrooms. The last 2 mobs that I needed to find were ocelots and foxes, both of which I was not looking forward to. Surprisingly, I managed to find and breed the ocelots almost instantly. Trust me, this could have taken way longer. Finding 2 foxes was more difficult, but still way easier than I thought it would be. The only problem with the foxes is that they were very good at running away. At last, I was only 1 mob away from finishing the achievement, and after 2 buckets of tropical fish, 2x2 was completed. There was still some time left in the day, so I decided to start looking for the last 2 cat breeds. What I wasn't expecting was to find a village that had both cat breeds before the night was over. I'm just going to say it right now that I am never ever going to be this lucky with cats again. Reaching 500 days of hardcore Minecraft is a big deal, and I wanted to do something exciting for it. And hey, what's more exciting than completing the game's hardest advancement? How did we get here? To start the preparations, I brewed all of the potions needed for the achievement. I already had a lot of the potions from previous brewing, but I still needed some of the more obscure ones, such as slowness and invisibility. Once the potions were done, I spent the rest of the day AFKing at the drowned farm for nautilus shells. However, when I went to check the killing chamber, there weren't any drowned. I'm not sure, but it appears that the 1.18 spawning changes broke the farm. This left me with only one option to get the nautilus shells: fishing. The only issue with this method is that there is only a 2% chance to get a nautilus shell even with luck of the C3. Sadly, after a whole day of fishing, I did not get a single nautilus shell. The day wasn't completely wasted though, as I managed to get the 2 birds 1 arrow achievement at night. All I had to do was trap 2 phantoms in a room and then get them both to 1 HP. Then, I just shot 1 arrow from my piercing crossbow, and boom, advancement complete. I continued fishing throughout day 494. While doing this, I made the decision to go for how did we get here in 600 days instead of 500 days, as I did not have enough time to prepare everything for the advancement. This meant that I now had 6 days to work on a new building project. But before I could do that, I needed to add more roses to the Iron Golem Memorial. Believe it or not, Snowville is pretty much completely filled with builds. The only large spot that was still empty was between the church and the mines. In this area, I decided to build a custom tree hangout area where the villagers could go to relax. This was my first time making any sort of organic build in this world, and it was fun experimenting with a different build style. The only annoying part of the build was placing all the leaves in the tree. Let's just say that I fell down more times than I want to think about. Overall, I think that the build turned out really well and gives a great vibe to the village. Day 500. To be honest, I never thought that I would be able to survive this long in a hardcore Minecraft. However, there's still a lot that I need to do in this world before I can call it complete. But for now, let's focus on the things that we've accomplished so far. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing. But other than that, this has been GlitchNOut. Goodbye everyone!